Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
They're building a team to undermine a future president of the United States. So let's just go through this NBC News report a little bit more in depth here, because it's absolutely bonkers and crazy. You can just kind of roll it here on the screen, Philip. America's commander-in-chief has vast powers at his disposal, some well-known, others not so much. Some lawmakers and pro-democracy advocates worry there may be nothing stopping a president from mobilizing the military to intervene in elections, police American streets, or quash domestic protests. Some lawmakers on Capitol Hill worry that Trump might invoke the Insurrectionist Act to involve the armed forces in the face of domestic protests, or if the midterm elections don't go his way. One of my favorite quotes, though, is from Senator Richard Blumenthal, is crafting a bill that would clarify the Insurrectionist Act and give Congress and courts some say in its use instead of the president. And chances of passage are slim, given that Republicans control the House and are largely loyal to Trump. And he says, Richard Blumenthal says, there are an array of horrors that could result from Donald Trump's unrestricted use of the Insurrection Act, Blumenthal said in an interview. A malignantly motivated president could use it in a vast variety of dictatorial ways unless at some point the military itself resisted what they deemed to be an unlawful order. I mean, it goes on and on and on in here.
But I do recall that this was part of the narrative in the 2016 campaign as well. They said that a lot of military people are telling high-up media sources that they won't follow Trump's command because he's a blowhard and they don't like him. So they did try this before. This is a repeat. Whether or not they're actually sources who are intending on doing it this time around is a different story.
Well, we already know Mark Milley did. We already know that related to the January 6th and even before that.
Yeah.
And Trump's ability to use nuclear weapons or have access to certain types of weapons, that the president, the commander-in-chief of the military. Under the Constitution of the United States, he is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military. So when you have literally members of Congress, a loose-knit organization, Democrats and otherwise, who are saying they're going to wrest control of the military away from the commander-in-chief, that's not the United States of America. That is a coup.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind. We gotta get into some of this leftist insanity today. You know, we've been clowning on Dementia Hitler lately, we've been clowning on Joe Biden, mainly due to his pathetic attempt to cast Donald Trump as some sort of Hitlerian threat to American democracy. I mean, it's literally the orange man bad meme. Well, just when you thought it couldn't get more dystopian, or just when you thought it couldn't get more ridiculous, Democrats attempt to take it to the next level in one of the cringiest, most inauthentic fear-mongering campaigns I think I've ever witnessed. Now, let me clarify by saying that the ad I'm about to show you guys is not part of Joe Biden's official campaign for president, but still is part of the Democrat campaign as a whole. This thing was for sure funded by Democrat organizations. This is one of the most ridiculous things you will ever see. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. Is 11 Films, award-winning pro-democracy production house. Democracy is under attack. Let's fight back together. They just released this video titled Trump's New America. We refuse to live in Trump's New America.
I love this guy. He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, "No, no, no, other than day one." As my first order of business, I hereby declare martial law.
Citizens of the New America, here are today's announcements. Supreme Leader Donald Trump proclaims the 4th of July will no longer be celebrated as Independence Day. In honor of our 2021 Patriots, January 6th will now be recognized as our great nation's birthday. All citizens are required to participate in quadrant festivities. Failure to do so will be met with harsh punishment and immediate incarceration in your local detention camp.
I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk.
Effective immediately, all children are now considered spiritual soldiers of MAGA. Regardless of rape, incest, or health of the woman, abortion is now illegal. Anyone caught providing or receiving an abortion will be charged with murder.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion?
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
Due to previous liberal indoctrination, all schools are hereby closed. All citizens must participate in their quadrant's book elimination celebration festivities. Failure to do so will be met with harsh punishment and immediate incarceration in your local detention camp. All migrants, refugees, and dreamers are now considered enemies of the New America and will be rounded up, incarcerated, and deported immediately.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. We will root out the radical left thugs that live like vermin. Vermin.
Your curfew and freedom to travel will be determined by your quadrant's Vermin Surveillance System score. The Vermin Surveillance System has proven to be invaluable in detecting and squashing liberal uprisings. All citizens must continue to report any progressive or liberal activity. Failure to do so will be met with harsh punishment and immediate incarceration at your local detention camp. Your unwavering loyalty to Supreme Leader Donald Trump is mandatory and essential in keeping the New America great forever.
Now, trust me when I tell you that was not parody, that was an actual, genuine Democrat ad funded by Democrat donors and operatives. 11 Films, right under this video, posted, "We're raising funds for our next project. Can you help? Chip in here." And guess where it links? Straight to actblue.com. So this is obviously an official Democrat production that they claim is, quote, funded by the resistance. And what they mean by funded by the resistance is funded by Reid Hoffman and other billionaire Democrat donors. So it's not parody. That was real. This is the actual angle that Democrats are taking heading into the next election. Science fiction movie nonsense based in some sort of Trump derangement syndrome fairy tale. And the leftist response to this video is quite telling. "Great work. I only wish I could write it off as hyperbole. There is no bottom and there's nothing too extreme from the MAGA Christo-fascists. We will not survive another term. Scary because this is actually what we are facing. It has happened in other countries and could happen here. This is so chilling. Trump's New America would be the most anti-American path that we could take." Am I the only person that feels like I'm in an insane asylum? Probably not, because that was the most insane thing I've ever seen. Yes, if Donald Trump is elected, women seeking abortions will start to get arrested. Then they cue the out-of-context clip where Trump claims that there probably should be punishments. Fascism. No, not fascism. Common sense. If a society or a state declares that abortion past a certain point should be illegal, well then then it becomes a crime, it becomes law, then yeah, there should probably be some sort of punishment if someone breaks the law. That's how legislation, writing laws, and democracy works. Ooh, scary fascism. Donald Trump's gonna declare martial law on day one. It's just so science fiction, it's so stupid, it's so ridiculous, but most importantly, it's completely hypocritical. Like I always say, this coming from the party constantly attempting to rig the system, this coming from the party that sees no problem with weaponizing the DOJ or launching Ministry of Truth departments. Give me a frickin' break. What's this hyperbolic strategy of demonizing Donald Trump is not only demonizing Donald Trump, but demonizing Trump supporters or people who are starting to come over to his side. Essentially, you're looking at slightly right-leaning and sometimes even slightly left-leaning independents and telling them, you're crazy and you're supporting Christo-fascism, full-on authoritarianism and takeover of American democracy. That's insane. Independents are watching this stuff going, what? This is not me and not what I support. This is the most ridiculous video I've ever seen.
Cheat, 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 cheat.
The DOJ must have an entire omelet buffet, country buffet from Cracker Barrel on their face right now. New filing from the DOJ political organizer, Democrat, former president of the city council, charged with submitting fraudulent mail-in ballots. What happened here? Oh my, I thought it was the most safe and secure election in my lifetime. Apparently, Democrat operative was able to sell his services as the ballot magician and just literally just make up ballots. He paid for ballots and then he just shoved them into the boxes. It's as simple as. We've been covering this all over the country, but here's just the latest example from our own Justice Department. Isn't that amazing? Are always the ones doing this. This is what Obama talking about with political organizing. It's election fraud. When you hear that, you should just say, oh, election fraud. This is our Department of Justice writing this. This guy is charged in a criminal complaint for depriving, defrauding, and attempting to defraud residents of the state of New Jersey, fair and impartially conducted election process by the fraudulent procuring, casting, tabulation of ballots. Tabulation of ballots? Oh my gosh. Okay. So what it goes on to say here is that this guy straight up, they were able to prove that this guy straight up rigged the outcome of elections. This is literally happening in every corner of the country, in every state of the country, on varying levels of severity, but it's all happening. Listen, when you make something that should be secure, like your ballot, or let's say a vault full of money at your bank, if you opened up that vault and every bank vault in America was just wide open, do you think that people would start, sometimes some of the worst people in society, sometimes just people who are well-meaning and maybe need a buck, would start sneaking into that bank vault and they could just get in there and grab the money? Do you think that some people would actually, in an organized fashion, go take all the money? And once they realize that this is an insecure system, of course they would. And that is what's happening with mail-in ballots across the nation. It's always the same story. It's always the same story. Mail-in ballots either are stolen or paid for, and then they are used to rig elections. The end. Queens man forged absentee ballots in Democrat primary scheme as part of a voter fraud scheme. What happened to this guy? This guy caught a case of 140 counts of voter fraud. His name's Abdul Rahman. Indicted him for falsifying business records, criminal possession, and forged instruments, and other crimes submitting to falsified absentee ballots. In the Democrat primary, you'll also find something very interesting. These are often Democrats doing this against Democrats.
The election is rigged.
Tear down the barrier.
And New Jersey, where that fraud was going on, that organized criminal fraud was going on, a judge in Connecticut overturned the results of a Democrat primary in the bluest county in Democrat because the volume of ballots was so mishandled that it calls into question the results of the primary election. I am unable to determine the legitimate result of the primary, the judge wrote, this Democrat judge in this Democrat county, saying there's so much fraud that we have no idea who won. How? Well, obviously, you know it quite well because of old ballot wizard Wanda. Here's the footage of Wanda, who works for the county, wandering up with a trash bag full of ballots. This is, of course, illegal. Is Wanda in jail? Is Wanda facing any charges? Of course not. Wanda's a Democrat. She's protected by the Democrats who would prosecute her. Here, Wanda goes and does a lap, trying to absolve her sins, and then comes right back and shoves more ballots into the box. Why does Wanda's a criminal, why does Wanda have access to so many ballots? Great question. Jesse Waters went and asked.
So it's up to us to shine a light on corruption. That's why we sent Johnny to see Wanda.
How's it going? Johnny from Fox, how are you? How are you? Nice to see you. Wanda, why did you stuff the ballots? Wanda? Why did you stuff the ballots? Wanda, there's surveillance video of you stuffing the ballots. Do you have anything to say? Wanda? Wanda, what do you want to say to the people of Bridgeport?
So Wanda pled the fifth, just like she did in court. We're not letting this go.
Oh, baby, but like it gets so much worse than just Wanda. Patterson City Council president and wife stole mail-in ballots to rig 2020 election. Now, this was slightly less sophisticated, but absolutely wild. This is Patterson, New Jersey, okay? So back to New Jersey. City Council of New Jersey's third largest city in Patterson directed an election fraud scheme to help him win his seat. Here's what happened to this guy named Alex Mendez. Alex Mendez, this dude, here he is, here with Bill Clinton, of all people. Cory Booker, he's the senator from New Jersey. And Whoopi Goldberg. Oh, yeah, Whoopi, ladies and gentlemen. This guy and his scumbag wife went and stole ballots directly out of people's mailboxes. I love talking shit, but like, this is literally according to the filing by the Attorney General of New Jersey. He stole ballots from the mailboxes, took the paper out of the ballots, literally voted the way he wanted the person to vote, refolded the paper and put it back in the ballots. If that person had already cast their ballot, then this guy would change their vote and put it back in and then vote for him. Yeah, baby. How about this? Real insurrection is allowing 8 million criminal migrants, many of them from hotbeds of terrorism, to enter our nation, and we have no idea who they are or where they're going. That's an actual insurrection against our nation, and then using the American military to facilitate that. So that's using the American military against the American people. There's your insurrection. Let's strip Joe Biden from the ballot. And by the way, it's not just him. Ron DeSantis floats the idea that Biden could be removed from the ballot for letting 8 million illegals into the country and violating the Constitution. Same thing. Speaking at a campaign event on Wednesday morning, following the ruling the Colorado Supreme Court disqualifying Trump being the state primary ballot, DeSantis said, what you're seeing the left do, they'll use the power of the state to advance their agenda. And you see that with Colorado Supreme Court. So then DeSantis went on to say, could we just say that Biden can't be on the ballot because he let in 8 million illegals into the country and violated the Constitution? Saying, we're just going to take Joe Biden off the ballot here. Well, that wouldn't be very good. There's a lot more people in Texas than Colorado. A lot more people in Florida than Colorado. Why don't we just remove Joe Biden's name from all of those states? You find out.
To deport them. Joining me now is the Texas Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick. Dan, now the White House said today that this law won't make communities safer. Your response?
So we spent a lot of time, Laura, in the Senate writing this bill along with the governor, and we believe we have a bill that will survive any type of Supreme Court challenge because we are being invaded. Arizona tried this about 10 years ago, but our law is different. It simply says that our law enforcement can arrest anyone, take them in, do a background check, photograph, do fingerprints. If they saw them cross the border illegally, we can do that. Or if they happen to reveal in the arrest stop that they crossed illegally, and then the magistrate will send them back and will escort them to the border. And they have a choice. They can go to jail or they can go back. And if they go back and try to come back again and we arrest them again, the penalty gets even higher. We're fed up. In fact, seeing what happened in Colorado tonight, Laura, it makes me think, except we believe in democracy in Texas.
Wonder crooked Joe Biden and the far left lunatics are desperate to stop us by any means necessary. They are willing to violate the U.S. Constitution at levels never seen before in order to win this election. Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. It's a threat. They're weaponizing law enforcement for high-level election interference because we're beating them so badly in the polls.
That is correct. And
you know, there's the fucking border's been invaded by hundreds of thousands of illegals. How many of them are militants? How many of them have snuck in across the border and are forming terror cells? We don't know. I mean, that's the giant fear.
That's for sure happening.
For sure.
There's no doubt.
For sure.
I read this thing that there's like 6 to 10 million people that came across the southern border in the last 4 to 5 years. That's as many people that live in New York City. And then like a crazy increase in people coming across the northern border.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Like, and I see it. I've been in California a lot the last few months. It's insane how many more people are just obviously all of a sudden just appearing, like getting dropped off on like street corners with buses, literally just in the middle of nowhere. They literally just get off the bus with a cell phone.
But look at New York City. When Coleman was explaining how New York City literally has a mandate to house its homeless.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be the people that lived there that were down on their luck. And now it's people that have come in from other cities or other countries rather, illegally. And they're trying to make it so that those people can vote. And you see what they're doing with people from Venezuela?
Crazy.
They're sending people back from Venezuela?
Only from Venezuela.
Yeah, because Venezuela opposes socialism. So they're not going to vote Democratic.
Yeah.
They don't want those people.
That's crazy.
It's fucking wild.
It's crazy how it's so odd. Like when you start thinking about it like that, that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's like totally political, all these moves.
100%.
Yeah.
They're literally importing Democratic voters.
Yeah.
They think by allowing the borders to be porous and by giving people aid and giving people housing that you're essentially guaranteeing that if you can rig it so that those people are allowed to vote, those people are going to vote Democratic. Also, if you're importing people that have come from horrible crime-ravaged parts of the world, that's what they grew up with. That's what they're accustomed to. And
that's
if you also
baseline.
have a defunding of the police
Yeah.
and you also have a complete disrespect for law enforcement in this country, well, it's a recipe for disaster.
You seem to respect my policy on drugs. You know, the feds, they tolerate certain things. Not drugs. Make your crew understand they deal in drugs, that's all.
Untouchable. Son of a bitch is sitting on a $500 million a year enterprise, and he knows how to spread it around.
Correction. He's sitting on top of a $500 million a year criminal enterprise. This is no Fortune 500 company he's running here.
Wait, this is going to get better, but I need to interject here. You have to remember that they just found 117 files that they were scrubbed from the hard drive that was turned over to the J6 committee. So we know there's good stuff on there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have scrubbed it.
Yeah. And so I guess the issue would be a selective prosecution claim can be brought pre-trial if they think that there are grounds on it.
Now I want to show you some fireworks from public comments at the Fulton County meeting.
It's over. Well, I want to let you know that Derek Blassigan, I'm done with Fulton County fumbling our elections. I'm done with the gross mismanagement of our taxpayer dollars by the Fulton County Democrats on this body. I'm disgusted at the information that is coming out of the district attorney's office as a taxpayer. I am done with most of your silence at the DA's apparent love affair with the special prosecutor and gross mismanagement of taxpayers' dollars to pursue what appears to be a frivolous lawsuit based off of partisan politics. The belief she's trying to interfere with future elections by trying to convict a candidate before the general election. I'm requesting a financial audit to be done by the county auditor of the district attorney's office immediately.
I'm on Facebook Live. Who are we flying to see? This has got to be the most outrageous flight. You ever seen anything like this?
The media lies.
Guys, hold
This is the most dangerous election we've ever had, the most dangerous, because I don't think we can ever bring it back if they get in. I don't think there's anything called a comeback. It'll be another Venezuela. I used to say that lightly. I now say it very strongly. The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that. They're going to mail out 80 million ballots. Who's mailing them? Mostly Democrat states and Democrat governors. Well, supposing they don't mail them to Republican neighborhoods, that means they're not going to get them. So they're going to complain, and the election's going to be over, and then they're going to complain, and then they'll say, oh, well, we didn't get it, big deal. In the meantime, you might lose the election. This is the greatest scam in the history of politics, I think, and I'm talking about beyond our nation.
Is there any person here that actually thinks that Joe Biden won this election?
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
If they ran such a clean election, they'd have you come in and look at the paper ballots. Who hides evidence? Criminals hide evidence.
They put those ballots in a secret folder in the machines, sitting there waiting until they know how many they need. And then the machine, after the close of polls, we now know who's voted and we know who hasn't. And I can now, in that machine, match those unvoted ballots with an unvoted voter and put them together in the machine.
This is not a singular voter fraud in one state. This pattern repeats itself in a number of states. Almost exactly the same pattern.
Remember, most secure election in American history.
Foes have long accused him of this fraud.
Anybody messing with mail-in ballots needs to go. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat.
Michael. A former Atlantic City Council president is facing charges again. Longtime political operative Craig Calloway has been arrested on federal charges of ballot fraud. Authorities allege Calloway organized a mail-in ballot scheme that allowed him to deliver large blocks of ballots to election officials that often swayed the outcome of the election. As senior correspondent Joanna Gagos reports, Calloway's political foes have long...
Did you hear that? Often swayed the outcome of elections. Doesn't matter if it's one illegal vote on a losing campaign, it's still one illegal vote. But this guy was swaying the elections.
Accused him of this fraud.
Anybody messing with mail-in ballots needs to go. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat.
Michael Suleiman is applauding the arrest and arraignment yesterday of Craig Calloway, a political operative who's worked on the campaigns of elected officials from both parties. He was charged by the U.S. attorney with election fraud for coordinating efforts to fraudulently cast mail-in ballots.
After years and years of this blatant illegality, finally law enforcement is doing something about it, albeit late. We wish this happened years ago, but we are vindicated that, the efforts we've taken against this guy have at least paid off.
Suleiman is chairman of the Atlanta County Democratic Committee that sued Calloway for what they say are years of election fraud and public corruption.
Which, to any experienced investigator, prosecutor, would suggest that there was a plan from a centralized place to execute these various acts of voter fraud, specifically focused on big cities, and specifically focused on, as you would imagine, big cities controlled by Democrats.
And if we're wrong, we will be made fools of. But if we're right, a lot of them will go to jail.
Justice.gov, from our own Justice Department. It's such a secure election. 2020 was secure. Well, this guy rigged it. I mean, this is what's amazing. This guy, they say that this guy straight up was able to rig elections and sway elections with the number of fake and false fraudulent ballots that he was able to concoct and pay for. Atlanta City, New Jersey, man was arrested today for his role in procuring, casting, and tabulating fraudulent mail-in ballots submitted on November 2022. Oh, really? You think he just came up with this? He's 64. Craig Calloway. This guy was the president of the City Council of Atlantic City, a political organizer who assisted campaigns for elected officials. Isn't that amazing how these political organizers, these like Obama-style people?
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. When you hear, while there is no evidence to prove any wrongdoing, this is the most fraudulent thing anybody said. This is a criminal enterprise. This is a criminal enterprise. And the press will say, and I'm sure they won't put any of that on there because that's no good. And you ever see, while there is no evidence to back President Trump's assertion, I could go on for another hour reading this stuff to you and telling you about it. There's never been anything like it. Think about it. Detroit had more votes than it had voters.
I'm very confused for the following reason. So I don't understand. I don't understand who the police are with. I thank God that it's not the Secret Service and it's not the National Guard, because I think they're still under the control of the president. People are now trying to head back there. We're having a very peaceful protest. Nothing is happening. Nick, come!
All right, we're on the Capitol steps, and they broke through the police line, and people are going in. The doors are open! The doors to the Capitol are open!
Help, help, help! We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us. From me, from you, from our country. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil.
They will not come. If we got ruling, they go home. They go home. They go home. We got to get her out of here.
I know how you feel, but go home and go home in peace.
At least I know I'm free.
Do you miss me yet? Do you miss me yet? We have a very sick and corrupt electoral process that must be fixed immediately. This election was rigged, and the Supreme Court and other courts didn't want to do anything about it. Who knows? I may even decide to beat them for a third time, okay? Beat them for a third time. True.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organization should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done, and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. You can't agree to that. How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two,
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
You killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've already
still in
done.
Parliament, I...
Well, Clayton, we're just literally drowning in a record $34 trillion in government debt, with interest payments now alone standing at $1 trillion a year and expected to be $1.5 trillion in the next 10 years. Now, that number does not include the $1.5 trillion that the government's going to overspend anyway. So we're probably looking at $2.5 to $3 trillion deficits for the next 5 or 6 years. Personal debt is hitting the roof, with credit card debt at all-time highs. Corporate bankruptcies have soared up 23%. Really, the debt is slowly killing the economy and really could take people's savings and retirement accounts with it, just like we saw in 2008. It's going to be the same type of recession, just different as far as which asset's going to, crash. We have real estate probably pulling back because of the higher interest rates, but you just have the stock market absolutely skyrocketed. And it took 7 years to get back to even from that 2008 recession. I think you're going to see some of the same just because of the enormous amount of debt that has been created on the consumer side, corporate side, and government side.
Something happened this month that I want to make sure that people do not miss. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social this document. It is a 32-page document containing all the latest information about what has been exposed about fraud in the 2020 election. We're going to walk through this document this week on Wolves in Finance. I need to start this video with a disclaimer. YouTube policy does not allow you to say in videos that the certified results of elections were wrong. So, in keeping with this policy, I will not be saying in this video whether Donald Trump did or did not win the 2020 election. Instead, I'm going to be laying out all the facts, and I'll let you decide for yourselves. What I want you to do is watch this video all the way to the end and then leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. Do you think the 2020 election was stolen? Let me know in the comments below. It's important to understand the context of President Trump's post. He is currently facing a criminal RICO trial in Fulton County, Georgia, because he questioned the results of the 2020 election. The case is based on a bizarre legal theory that Donald Trump knew that he lost the election, but lied about it and committed fraud by trying to convince everyone that he actually won. So the key question in the case was whether Donald Trump was lying when he claimed he won the 2020 election. The district attorney bringing the case against Donald Trump is Fani Willis. It was revealed in a court filing this week that Fani Willis has been sleeping with the special prosecutor she hired to handle the case against Trump. The special prosecutor is named Nathan Wade, and he has never filed a RICO case. Fani Willis has paid Nathan Wade more than $650,000 while they were sleeping together. Fani Willis has other attorneys working in her office with experience in RICO cases. Why in the world would she pay someone $650,000 who has no experience? It turns out they would then use the money to pay for trips to places like the Caribbean. This looks like obvious corruption, and there is currently a motion filed to dismiss. Let's go back to when the case was first filed. When President Trump was first arrested by Fani Willis in August, he announced that he was going to release a 100-page report containing evidence of fraud in the 2020 election that would prove the election was stolen. He claimed it was a conclusive report and that all charges should be dropped against me and others. Now, at the time, he never released that report, saying that his legal counsel wanted him to wait until trial. I believe this new report that was just released this month is part of the president's conclusive report. So what is in this new report? It goes through all the swing states in the 2020 election. For each state, it gives a list of bullet points with evidence of fraud in the election. Each one of the bullet points comes with citations to sources backing up these claims. This is important to understand. These are not just random statements of fact. The bullet points are backed up by detailed investigations, which you can then read to get even more information. Now, I'm not going to go through all the information in this report because there is a lot. I'm going to review some of the more shocking highlights. Here's a list of all the swing states with the vote differences. Each of these states was called for Joe Biden, some by very narrow margins. Donald Trump only needed to win 3 of these states, and he would have won the election. The report argues that Donald Trump actually won all of these 5 states: Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan. Let's start with Georgia. In my opinion, this is the most obvious case of fraud. It was reported that Trump lost Georgia by 11,779 votes. In Fulton County, we have video evidence of a poll worker named Ruby Freeman running the same stack of ballots through the counting machines multiple times. Ironically, Ruby Freeman was later given the Presidential Citizens Medal by Joe Biden for her work during the 2020 election. Ruby Freeman has sued Rudy Giuliani for defamation in a Washington, D.C. court, and last month, a mostly Democrat jury awarded Ruby Freeman a $150 million verdict against Rudy Giuliani. In the complaint, Ruby Freeman explains that she did not like that Rudy Giuliani talked about the video of her and that Rudy Giuliani falsely accused her of counting the same ballots multiple times, among other things. She claims that since the election results were certified as correct, that any statement made by Rudy Giuliani is false. Rudy Giuliani was not allowed during the trial to submit one piece of evidence to the court. Now, can someone please explain this to me? How can there be a fair trial if the judge does not allow the defense to present any evidence? That doesn't seem very fair to me. There are some other unusual things about this case. How is this case being tried in Washington, D.C.? Ruby Freeman is in Fulton County, Georgia. Rudy Giuliani's comments were that she engaged in election fraud in Fulton County, Georgia. Why is this in Washington, D.C.? In the complaint, Ruby Freeman explains that Rudy Giuliani's comments were broadcast over the OAN news channel, which has an office in Washington, D.C. Rudy Giuliani also worked in Washington, D.C. as Donald Trump's lawyer. So for that reason, the case went to trial in Washington, D.C. in front of a mostly Democrat jury. Rudy Giuliani has already said that he plans to appeal the verdict. It should be noted that Ruby Freeman's complaint states that this video does not show her committing illegal ballot counting. But we can see with our own eyes that she counts the same stack of ballots multiple times. What should we choose to believe? Her own statement or the video that we can see with our own eyes? What do you think? The problem with Ruby Freeman's statements is that the evidence provides a lot of doubt. In the report from President Trump, it states, Fulton County certified 59,143 in-person votes on Election Day, despite the fact that only 14,152 people had voted as of 5 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020. Evidence suggests the in-person vote total on Election Day was inflated by approximately 37,000 votes. Somehow, a whole lot of votes came out of nowhere from people who did not exist. Could this have come from poll workers counting the same ballots multiple times? Remember that the vote difference in Georgia was only 11,779 votes, and we are talking about a potential 37,000 fake ballots. Another issue in Georgia was the mail-in ballots. It's much easier to cheat with mail-in ballots because anyone can drop it off in the mail. You are relying on the people counting the votes, like Ruby Freeman, to do the honest thing and verify that the ballot is accurate before they count it. Well, it turns out that in Georgia, likely 67,284 votes were cast from voters with invalid residency. These were people who did not actually live in Georgia, but had their vote counted anyway. Remember, the vote difference in Georgia was only 11,779 votes, and just this issue alone would be 67,284 illegal votes. There are many more bullet points about issues in the Georgia elections, but I think you get the point. There is a lot of evidence of election fraud in Georgia, specifically in Fulton County. So it is odd that Fulton County is the place that is criminally prosecuting Donald Trump for asking questions about the election. It also seems like Fani Willis is attempting to cover something up. The next state is Wisconsin. The vote difference was 20,682 votes. Wisconsin is interesting because they instituted a sweeping new election policy that because of COVID, anyone could request indefinitely confined status. That meant that you were too sick to leave the house and were granted an exception that you could vote by mail without having to show your ID. This resulted in 220,404 votes cast from individuals who were exempted from showing voter ID. That would be incredibly easy to cheat if you never had to show an ID. We are talking about a vote difference of 20,682 votes, and 220,404 votes were cast without an ID. This problem really shows itself when we look at nursing homes. Nursing homes in Milwaukee, Dane, and Racine counties had 100% turnout. So you're telling me that 100% of people in nursing homes voted? Some people in nursing homes are nearing death. So even people who were literally on their deathbeds got up and voted. Something just doesn't sound right to me about that. In one example, Merrill Barrett, who was 104 years old and did not recognize her own children, had a ballot cast in her name in the 2020 presidential election. Okay, now, how obvious do we have to get that some funny business is going on? Again, there are many more bullet points about issues in Wisconsin, but I think you get the point. The next state is Pennsylvania. The vote difference in Pennsylvania was 80,555 votes. Now, that sounds like a lot until you find out that there were 121,240 more votes than voters. Pennsylvania uses a voting system called SURE, the Statewide Uniform Registry of Electors. They were never able to reconcile the number of votes that were counted with the number of people who were registered to vote. So the vote difference was 80,555 votes, and there were 121,240 more votes than voters. This is another example where there are many more bullet points in the report, but this one fact alone raises a lot of questions for me. The next state is Arizona. This is the closest vote margin with only 10,457 votes. Arizona did some of the most blatantly illegal things. I don't know if you remember this, but Arizona took a really long time to count their ballots. The election took place on November 3rd. Well, they didn't finish counting the ballots until November 30th. Well, it turns out they were accepting and counting ballots after the election day. These were illegal votes. Here's a quote from the report. Maricopa County accepted 20,500 mail-in ballots after Election Day. By law, ballots must be received no later than 7 p.m. on Election Day, which was November 3rd. So the election was over, the deadline was passed, and they were still receiving and counting ballots days after the election was over. These are illegal votes. The vote margin was 10,457 votes. This one example accounts for 20,500 ballots. What makes matters worse is that the Maricopa County Elections Department withheld this information from public records requests for 7 months after the elections. No one knew this was going on until it was too late to protest the election. This looks a lot like cheating. Also, just like in the other states, it looks like some of the votes were completely made up. 2 precincts in Pima County had over 100% turnout for mail-in ballots. Can someone in the comments please explain to me how this can happen? Because I'm really having a hard time understanding this. How is it possible to have more than 100% of people vote? How is that possible? What is even more suspicious is the Arizona Secretary of State during the 2020 election was someone named Katie Hobbs. She is the person responsible for running the election. It turns out, 2 years later, she somehow became the governor of Arizona. In 2022, she ran against Kari Lake. Katie Hobbs miraculously won against all polling predictions, and Katie Hobbs certified her own election count, naming herself the winner. Katie Hobbs' election is still being contested in the courts. With Arizona, there are many more bullet points in President Trump's report, but I think you get the point. The next state is Michigan. The vote difference is 151,188 votes. Now, this is the largest vote difference out of the swing states, and it sounds like a lot until you find out that Michigan has 271,566 more votes than the number of voters listed in its qualified voter file, more than 1.5 times the election margin. Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? Not only that, Michigan is a state where we have video of ballots being delivered in a van at 3:30 a.m. past the 8 p.m. deadline. This was 50 boxes of ballots, each containing thousands of ballots. How can they count ballots that were received after the deadline? When we look at the ballot counts, we can see the spike that came from the suspicious ballots. Michigan was also the state where we now know there was a police investigation of a company called GBI Strategies. The police raided a GBI Strategies office to find thousands of fraudulent voter registrations. The forms were in the same handwriting and used fake addresses. GBI Strategies was funded by a super PAC called Black PAC, which paid the firm $11,254,919 to register voters for Joe Biden in 2020. These people were not only under investigation for cheating during the election, they were making an awful lot of money doing it. Again, there are many more bullet points in the report, but I think you get the point. So that was the report that was posted by President Trump going through the 5 swing states in the 2020 election. Again, I'm not going to say whether the election was or was not stolen. I want you to decide. What do you think? Was the 2020 election stolen? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. For some reason, YouTube does not want my videos getting out there. So if you're not subscribed, you're probably not going to see them in your feed. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, if you want to support the channel, the best way is to sign up for a monthly membership on my website, wolvesandfinance.com. My videos get demonetized a lot. So the only way I survive is with support from viewers like you. If you're interested, a membership for $6 a month helps me to continue to put out these videos. I'm Zach from Wolves and Finance. Thank you for watching.
Man, please. Who is this guy I think he talking to? We free adults and you're a geriatric with an attitude. You son like crack prostitutes and you're a child sniffer. It's just me shit talking. Let's talk about Burisma. Oh, you thought that we forgot? No. Some people probably did, cause the media wipes your ass every time you take a shit. I mean, for real, this clown got plenty ties and buddies overseas. Conflict of interest, puppet of the CCP. And I just can't believe some people fall for your dumb shit. You got strings attached, Pinocchio, you don't run shit. You cut the pipeline and left us foreign fuel dependent. Got the gas prices hiking to the motherfucking ceiling. We hurting in our pockets with y'all making the killing. We try to protest, y'all wanna label us as villains, but the mask is peeling off, your beans are slowly spilling. We packing out stadiums screaming, cut. Nobody likes you. With our middle fingers up screaming. Nobody likes you. That's what we all saying. Yeah. Hell yeah. We got our middle fingers up screaming, fuck you, Joe. You jerking off the Taliban, ditched us in Afghanistan and left it up to Glenn Beck to retrieve her. And they scrambling for the airports with credentials and passports, and your administration saying, nah, leave him, you're a loser. And a disgrace for a president. Your ass should be impeached. The folks in DC had better sense, but they don't. They probably in on the plot, so they won't. Den of snakes. We seeing through your bullshit, lies and deceptions. Infringed on our right to speak, next it'll be the weapons. You want us unarmed so you can keep us in our place, but we standing in your face screaming. Man, why you always lying? You ain't even trying to convince us you telling the truth. And we want you out the building. Nah, we ain't feeling it. You like the children on the Maury show, illegitimate. Nobody likes you. With our middle fingers up screaming. Nobody likes you. That's what we all saying. Yeah. Hell yeah. We got our middle fingers up screaming, fuck you, Joe.
Come on, man. 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 How many push-ups you want to do here, pal? Oh, come on, man. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on. man.